This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
you know, I'm bringing, got Diane on the phone now, Vincent. Welcome, guys. Diane, Murray Clements on the line. I got Vincent. Good morning. And I got Vincent Squat. Oh, wait a minute. People are going to say they can't hear you. I don't have the mic set up properly. But they can hear me, I think. Okay. So everybody should be good now. So I got Diana Murray Clements on the line, and I got Vincent Squire on the line, and I'm working on the technical stuff with the microphone. So we should all be set now.
As everybody say, here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. So listen, I took a sigh when we went on air because here, I don't know where else. I'm not saying that we're the only place, but here we cover and try to tackle the tough issues impacting our community. And it rubs people the wrong way in some instances, but it's no different than what is going on around this country in black households and in white households too, right? Around a dinner table, kitchen table, dining room table, trying to figure this whole thing out. But what I do know is soft shoeing isn't going to resolve it. Yeah, just anywhere, just right there. It's fine, babe. Thanks. So these trying to cover these issues without tackling the tough questions and not running away from the difficult answers, right? And not trying to find your truth, but trying to find the truth is where we are. But I paused at the beginning of this show because yesterday, what did I say? We were talking about, what the true soul of America is, and woke up this morning and looked at the news, and Farrakhan called yesterday, and we were talking about people who in Ferguson burned down their community, robbed local store owners, sneaker store, a electronic store. They were walking out with flat screen TVs and new Jordans, right? And this was all on the heels, this conversation was on the heels of the post that I made where I said that black folks were caught up in their feelings over the death of the man in Minneapolis, but at the same time arguing about electing a racist into the White House. And now wake up this morning, and what do we see in Minneapolis? We see riots, we see looting, we see black folks in their feelings, stealing TVs and all kinds of other things. I just don't know. Diane, Vincent, I'm not at a loss for words.
But it sounds like you're caught in your feelings.
Well, no. Well, what I'm pondering another approach. I'm wondering whether the current approach is working, and if not, whether I should consider another approach. Because over the course of history, and we can see it, various black folks who have taken the mantle and taken to the mic or the lectern to talk about these issues, they've tried different approaches. But we see that, and we talked about this, in every key metric, there's been no improvement. In fact, we've gotten worse. So, just watching today and, watching news, and then watching the sensationalism of it on the news coverage to get black folks more caught up in their feelings as opposed to doing something about it is disturbing as well. But anyway, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Hey, Diane, you asked me to watch a documentary last night.
Yep, which one did you watch?
I watched Miles Davis' Birth of the Cool.
Wasn't that good?
Yeah. Yo. Listen. Whose puppy is that?
Mine, I'm outside. I'm doing yard work.
That's not the big dog, that's a little dog.
No, that's a little dog.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that's your big dog barking like that, They got.
What you gonna say? What you gonna say?
I was gonna say they got they're a little conflicted about who they are. Well, you know what? They may. What do they say? He may be identifying as a smaller dog.
You sound crazy. Oh goodness. Did you have breakfast this morning?
I didn't have breakfast this morning. But listen, I did watch Birth of a Cool, and we could talk about all the other components, and I could easily weave in Miles Davis with Michael Jordan, right? In that documentary, where when you reach the pinnacle, when you're the absolute best, and what you require from people as you shoulder them to usher in an era of excellence is astonishing. I mean, it takes a special human being to be able to get that done, and watching Miles Davis do that was extraordinary. Let's see if we can take this call early. Hold on. Hello, caller.
Brother, did you just invoke CG? They coming for you.
Did I invoke what?
Did you just invoke the wrath of the LGBT? They coming for you, bro.
Wait a minute, why? No.
That joke? Well, that joke will have them making you do apologies like you was Kevin Hart.
Are you serious? Are you? Listen. No, listen. Much like, did you see the last comedy show that Chappelle did? And when he did it,
My point exactly.
right? But I believe what Dave Chappelle said. You have to, if there's no bastion where we could be lighthearted about some things, right? If we don't have that, then we have nothing, right? And so pushing the boundaries, right, is the space that I'm in. And look, and not that I am trying to cloak myself in it, but I talk about this all the time. I defend the LGBTQ community all the time on this show. We've dedicated hours of talking about those tough issues as well. And I've talked about in my personal life, my daughters who are part of the LGBTQ community. So, and my cousin who is a transgender. So, listen, if there is such a shallow person who's a part of the LGBTQ community who wants to challenge me, you know where to reach me. you know where to reach me. So
I got you, brother. Listen, I got your guy, man. I understood the humor. I had to call the message on that one. I was like, yo, if that was on a national scene, boy, you'd be getting it right now for that.
But wasn't it funny?
And there you go, you're making it even worse.
It was funny. It was funny. It wasn't hurtful. It was funny. And for those who consider it to be hurtful, I can't tell you how to feel. I can only be responsible for what I say, not how you take it. That's the best I could do. Be responsible for what I say, not how you take it. But anyway, on to, did you see that documentary, Farrakhan? Birth of the Cool?
Not yet. That one, I don't know why I keep forgetting to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet.
So we could talk about whatever piece of it you want to talk about, Diane. But at some point, and I titled this show "Burn, Baby, Burn," because a match has been lit. The question is whether or not you have people who are going to fan the flame to burn it down, or whether you're going to have people try to stomp out the flame, right? And so, but it's burning right now, right? It's not quite an inferno, but it certainly is burning. And when I watched the documentary, I watched it this morning, when I was in the kitchen and baking this morning. And at about the 50-minute mark in it, or somewhere around there, Miles Davis talks about how he was headlining. So he was on the marquee. It said Miles Davis. He was performing somewhere in New York, and he had stepped upstairs onto the sidewalk to have a cigarette. And I don't know what the year was, but as he was smoking his cigarette, a white officer approaches him and tells him to move along. At which point Miles Davis says to the police officer that he's Miles Davis and points to the marquee. Points to the marquee. The one he's standing in front of. And the officer, I guess there's some words back and forth, and then what they say in the documentary is all of a sudden a detective came out of nowhere and just bashes Miles Davis upside his head. And then Miles Davis is rushed to the hospital. And what follows that scene in the documentary is them talking about the fact that no matter how high you get, no matter how much money you make, no matter what accolades you attain, there is still this system designed to keep you down, right? And so I thought about that then. So when that happened, then I'm thinking about, as I was baking, about Jay-Z and his album where he says, still nigga. Still nigga. Doesn't matter. Don't matter who you are. Be O.J. Simpson, be whoever you are. You are still classified as a nigga. Then I thought about what Farrakhan said yesterday, which drew the ire of the presumptive nominee when he was being interviewed. Much like Miles Davis stood up and said, no, I'm not going to move. I'm Miles Davis. You had Charlemagne the God say, nope, I'm not going to move. I got a question to ask you. And the answer to Miles Davis standing up as a black man to a system was the same answer given to Charlemagne the God, which is, then you ain't black. Because our understanding, because we made a deal based on the Willie Lynch letters, if we follow this prescription, this is what black would look like to us. So you're not black. And so now we have to turn back a couple pages in the letter because he tells us how to deal with you. Right? And so in Miles Davis's case, where they talk about taking the buck out there, right? And then strapping him up, quartering him, right? Publicly. That's what they do. And so it was crazy for me to see that. Crazy for me to see it. Or to hear it and to see it in the documentary and to be living it right now. And so I still got to ask the same question in the middle of all of this. In the middle of all of this. And I agree, again, if you didn't hear the episode yesterday, please go back and listen to it because my sister Jody Pittman called in and challenged me on some points, and I hope I answered her sufficiently, which was that I think that we should be focusing down. We should be focusing to change these issues, right? So, because if you could have, and you hear them talking about it now, and if you close your eyes and turn the TV, or open your eyes and turn the TV down, and didn't listen to the fact that it was happening in Minneapolis, you would think it was in New York with Eric Garner. It looks the same. It looks exactly the same, right? So from Eric Garner to this, nothing has changed. So when I say there's no transformative change happening, we go from a Democrat to a Republican, or a Democrat to a Republican, but nothing changes. We get emotionalized about whatever. We get taught through our conditioning to fight for one side or the other, but we're never fighting for ourselves. We're always abandoning what's in our best interest.
But I think, Eric, that's because we allow media to shape our opinions instead of us doing our due diligence to compare situations and news feeds. We get caught up in what the media says, the way we should think or how we should look at things.
Oh, sure we do.
And even with what's going on, and you talk about with the Miles Davis documentary, when you watch the other documentaries that I sent you as well, and Nina Simone, Quincy, they all, Smokey Robinson, they all talk about this era, Dionne Warwick, of Jim Crow.
Sure.
And these are people who have lived through it and are still living through it again and are seeing it in different ways. And it just has not gone away.
Well,
and
it's
until
not,
the
Diane,
whole America recognizes it will not stop.
But who has promised
you look at what happened with Ray Charles and being banned from performing in his home state of Georgia because of him refusing or taking a stand against the Jim Crow laws and performing.
But if we understand, so again, if we commit to be students of history, dare to be intellectually curious and read, we would recognize that there's nothing changing. And so what are we fighting for?
Well, we aren't fighting either. So you're talking about
No, we're fighting right now.
We're
fighting.
No.
Right now they're not doing
Diane,
fighting.
go.
They're making noise.
Okay. I you know what? You got it. So they're making noise right now in the midst of this. Right? They're making noise about, and to your point, if you turn on the news right now, the news has dialed it up 110%. No matter what channel you turn on now, all they're doing is feed. You know what it reminds me of? When I was taking advertising classes, well, what got me into wanting to take study advertising, I think I told this before, is that I couldn't believe that people could get people to buy a rock. That a company actually manufactured a rock, packaged it, and then got people to buy it, and they became millionaires. Right? That said to me, oh my God, you can condition people to buy anything. See, because I lived in the South Ward of Newark. I could just go down to the train tracks, Diane, and you know all the rocks that are down there by the train tracks. So I'm saying to myself as a kid, why are people going and buying a rock? All these free rocks. We used to go to the lake in Weekway Park, and we used to skip rocks on the water, and I didn't have to pay for one of them. But I said, Americans are so easily manipulated. So I wanted to go into marketing and advertising. Right? So in marketing and advertising, there were things that I learned. There were subliminal suggestions early on in advertising. They talked about how, and then, through passage of laws, companies were no longer able to do it. But you would sit and watch your television. And if you've been to the movie theater, Diane, and while you're watching the movie, you see like this black thing like come across the screen real quick, and you think it's like the film or whatever. They used to have images.
That's the stuff. Yep.
They used to have images that would do that, right? That your subconscious would pick up, but consciously you wouldn't see them. And those images were selling you stuff, right? And then they also had in the supermarkets, you would go into the store and they would have playing at a decibel that your subconscious would pick up, where companies would buy audio space, and they would say, for instance, buy Charmin. And you wouldn't hear it like consciously, right? But then all of a sudden, while you're in aisle 17, you say to yourself, gee, I need to get some Charmin. I want you to understand that that's what they were doing. Don't take Eric's word, go look it up. And so all advertising agencies have done is figure out under the current laws how to continue to manipulate you. And they're tied in to all of these networks, and that's what they do all day. They sit and try to figure out. And in all the polling that they do, all the surveys that they do, they're just trying to see if what they're doing is working. And so that's the space that we're all living in right now. So just like the subliminal message, buy Charmin, there's subliminal messages. Vote Biden, vote Trump. Vote Biden, vote Trump. Vote Biden, vote Trump. And then like
and it's called CNN, MSN, CBC, all of that.
All of them. And then we go out as though it's our own idea, right? Like we came up with the idea that I'm gonna vote for because no. That wasn't an original idea by you. It was something supplanted into your subconscious. Now, here comes the challenge, because people are so arrogant to believe, not me. They say, no, that's not what happened. I made the decision on my own. I'm telling you, you didn't. You're plugged into a matrix right now, and you don't even know it. What were you going to say, Vincent?
During the course of you changing to 14 different subjects, I totally lost
Vincent.
my point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, what were you gonna? Did you have something to say? Something to add?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay. So.
Hey, God.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. Listen, something just happened on the show. But how the situation is being handled in Minneapolis. We negated it by saying we're making noise, and I have a problem with that because no one said Hong Kong was making noise when they were burning it. See, whenever it's black folks, even ourselves, we go against ourselves. I never heard a dissenting voice when 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever it was, they were tearing up Hong Kong, when they were tearing up France. I didn't hear any French.
You know why?
So what I'm saying, we always negate our fight.
But there's an answer.
No, I didn't negate it. What I'm saying is, I'm calling it for what it is. We're making noise, and after this, there's going to be nothing
right.
from
So the
it.
question
They're not going to do anything with it.
Was there transformative change in those other areas? And so you talk about what was going on in Europe, what was going on in Asia. See, there was change made. You see,
the people that were fighting, that knew that they had a cause to fight for, stood together, because you didn't see the people of Asia or the people of Europe
taking televisions and flat screen TVs and other and burning down their communities. That's what we're equating to what took place in France and what took place in Hong Kong.
I'm sure in the process they did the exact same thing. I'm sure that rioting is right. I'm sure they broke in the store. I'm sure that they took things, they looted. That's what rioting is. So they did that also. See, we have to stop the internal fight. We got to say that we're going to have some knuckleheads in this fight. We're going to have some soldiers in this fight. We're going to have some 50-50s in the fight. And then we all got to work on the fight. See, everybody in a boxing training camp doesn't work on the same thing with the fight. Right? But the thing is, you got to beat the guy who's the opponent. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to play their role.
I don't disagree with that.
Now, so if we got some knuckleheads doing that, now we got some intelligent people over here.
But you know what, though?
While they got them over there for the burning, I need intelligent Eric Dawson's and intelligent
if you lost round one, so if you went in with a strategy, so your strategy, and let's use the analogy of boxing. So you go in and you lose round one with your strategy. You lose round two. Now you're up to round 15. You lost that too. You lose round 18. At some point, I'm going to sit and critique your strategy, right? And so if you're telling me from round one, well, hey, I think that we got this and that, and we got these people, and we should be doing this, and we should, okay, I'm good with you for round one. All right, you know what? That didn't work out in round one. Maybe it'll work out in round two. Now we're in round 17, and it's still working out, and you haven't adjusted your strategy, then I'm going to say something's wrong. So like I said, let's be students of history. I'm not saying here and now. I'm not saying let's take this moment right now. I'm saying let us be students of history. Let us dare to be intellectually curious and read. And I'm going to ask you, the strategies that we've been employing over decades, have we seen even marginal change?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and those key metrics.
We have. See, here's the problem, Eric, that we have with our marginal change and what's been going on in our situation is that the change has been. Can I?
Yes.
Do you mind? Can I answer your question?
Yes. In the parameters, though.
In the parameters, please. In the parameters of us actually seeing marginal change. The problem that we have is that the change has been so minute and so marginal, and even to the most point, marginalized by a lot of people, that we still have that same level of frustration. Mm-hmm. The COVID-19 is not the powder keg. That powder keg has been developed over hundreds and hundreds of years. What COVID-19 is doing now is lighting a match, and now people are actually taking it. So we want that change, and we don't want it as marginalized as it was before. That's why we keep having uprises, because we are not satisfied with the results.
I don't understand what you're
I
saying.
disagree.
I'm asking you
No.
this question. See, and you didn't answer my question again. Which is why I. Wait. Fair time. And you didn't answer You didn't answer my question, Vincent. So I'm saying to you, in these areas of education, of housing, of lack of wealth, of mass incarceration. Let's go down the list. I'm saying in those areas, you're saying that there have been change, positive change?
Yes, I'm saying that there has been change. The problem, and I'm going to say it again, what we are experiencing is that the change is coming so small and gradual that on the masses we don't see it changing. We don't see it. We don't see the change.
Give me some numbers.
Eric, maybe I can explain it to you this way.
Yeah.
The change that we're getting is a evolutionary process, but the change that you're looking for is a revolutionary process.
No. I want to know the evolution.
Can I give it to you, Eric? Let me give it to you. I can get it. Okay, first, right? Yesterday we talked about the rioting in Ferguson. Have you looked at Ferguson lately? Everybody that was in power in Ferguson prior to Mike Brown, gone.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to bring it to Newark. 67 when they had the rebellion, whatever that was, right? And by 1970, we got changed. By 1970, we had a black mayor, right? So understand. I got what you're about to say.
No.
What I'm saying, it's been changed. It's just been incremental. And then we get jive once we get the change. I don't have no questions to that. Right? We got a lot of job jokers when they get in power. But it's breaks.
What I'm asking you is what I'm asking you.
You have to accept the fact that the change is coming, but the change is not coming as fast enough for Eric.
What I'm asking you is this, right? So when Ayanna Pressley says no more of those faces that don't represent those, without voices to represent those people, right? So she talked about LGBTQ faces, black faces with no voices, all those things. I'm not talking about changing pieces on the chessboard. I'm talking about structural change. So if you take one person off of the Board of Education and put another person on the Board of Education, but the rate of failure has not improved or has not declined, then you haven't achieved change. So if your focus is on the people and not on the metrics, I think our focus is wrong. So what I would ask you is this. I get that the people have changed in Ferguson. Is that what we were fighting for? Or are we fighting for structural change?
No, we are fighting for both, but we're taking it in increments. Even when you play chess, Eric, it's one move at a time to get to checkmate.
No, but the person that I want to put in...
Let me finish, please. The change that we saw in Ferguson,
right.
It took one move at a time. The change that we saw in Baltimore took one move at a time. The change that we saw in Newark took one move at a time. And yes, we are going to make some wrong moves, but yes, we continue on with the change and changing that aspect.
No, so again, and I don't want to belabor it, but I would say that the hamster in the cage on the wheel thinks he's changing. But he's not moving anywhere, right? He thinks from where he is that he's changing. But he's still in that cage and he's still on that wheel. And he could be moving. He could be in perpetual motion, but not making the advancements. Call or go.
We all know what happens when that happens. You never find the hamster again, right? How many times have you lost your hamster out that little thing that they used to have back in the day and never found it again? Right? So that's what happens. Now, do you want to do that? I've always advocated for that. Let's leave it all. I don't want to talk about the Democratic Party. I don't want to talk about the Republican Party. Let's leave it all. But if you're not saying to do that, then you can't say what you just said.
Call or go.
Yeah, good morning, Eric. Hope all is well, my brother. Hope all is well. My comment is this. It's unfortunate that happened, that death that happened in Minnesota. But we never talk about the officers, or where these police officers are with mental health issues. The officers they all should go to jail for life, what they did to this brother. But the solution is not to burn and destroy property. The solution is the mental health thing of helping people during this crisis time, to healing the nation right now. We know that 45 is not a good president, and we're going to have an opportunity to change that in November. But now we have a crisis with this COVID-19. Now, on top of this thing in Minnesota, I mean, them jokers should all go to jail. No question about it. I'm all for that. But the solution is we have a mental health issue. When you go in, loot a store, and burn it down, there's some type of mental health issue to individuals like that. And that's not going to help the problem.
Well, it doesn't help the problem here, and this is why we get to the point of rioting. We have been talking and talking and talking, and they're not hearing us. And things continue to happen, but yet they do not hear us. And the only thing that seems to get their attention so that they can hear us is an uprising. It's someone throwing a brick through a store window, somebody burning up a building. Now they want to hear what's going on with the community. No, I'm not. No. Don't get me wrong. When I'm saying this, I'm not condoning what they did. Okay? And I'm not saying that, everybody should uprise and start tearing stuff up. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is that is just part of the actual, that's the effect of the symptom. Because the symptom is that that the police are biased. Because I investigated those police, the 3 of them have prior, and some of them have multiple prior.
Well, first
and that should have been addressed. Wait a minute. Wait, sir, please. That should have been addressed, but it wasn't addressed. It culminated, the fire tank was lit, and that was the explosion. That's what we're talking about. It should not have gotten to that point. That should have been done. They should have been addressing those officers and firing them after the first racial incident. Not letting them build up to 3 and settling out of court in 2017.
But they didn't have that one on camera. And see, that's the thing. When you expose this, then you see it, right? And sometimes you just have. I don't advocate for senseless violence. I don't advocate for burning down things. But sometimes, you know what? Excuse my language, shit got to get burned. Right?
These officers should never have been on the police force.
What are you talking about? 2 of those officers had
Vincent, no, please don't yell and let them.
Okay, yeah,
Thanks.
You're right. Okay.
Okay.
Listen, sir, 2 of those police officers had to, because of their incidents with black people, they sued the city, and the city had to settle out of court with them. But they still remained on the force.
Right. So here, and you and I talked about this off air, Vincent, and I said, look, here's the deal. The first thing that I think is important to acknowledge is this: we're not dealing with New York, or we're not dealing with Ferguson, we're not dealing with Minneapolis. We're dealing with America, and a deep-seated culture. Right? It is baked into its DNA to be the way that it is. And that's what we're dealing with. And so when you don't see a prescription coming from, and this is why I'm saying no change, right? You say gradual glacial change. But when you don't see prescriptions clear coming from candidates that you're supporting on how they're going to address these things, they're not going to address them. And so if we're just changing people, but there's no clear outline to go in and to eradicate, to blow it all up. If there's no plan to do that was laid out, then it's not going to be blown up.
But that's what they're for. And what I mean by that is, Vince, you're the military guy in this conversation. So I want to ask this question. Why don't generals go on the battlefield?
I mean, I just want to get to the...
I'm asking, why don't generals go on the battlefield? Because that's not their role in the war, right? So see, right now you got the battlefield soldiers out there burning stuff up. Now we need the generals to guide them and to do their part. And I call you, Eric, general. I call you, Vincent, general. I call you, Will, general. I call Diane, general. Because your mindset is different. You're not going to be the looter. All right, so we got the looter soldiers. They're out there. They're causing the noise that's creating the battle. Now I need the leadership to be true. I need the real leaders, the real stand-up people to stand up.
But Farrakhan, listen. Here's the reality of what's going on the battlefield, right? So those looters will never vote, right? Those looters never show up at board meetings.
They don't have to.
No.
They don't have to.
I'm gonna let you finish it. I'm gonna ask you.
Eric, those looters are showing up now. They are there now.
So, but
that is their vote, man. Their vote is the looting. It's the ones, right? Because they will show up, and I'm gonna tell you when they'll show up. They'll show up when Barack Obama runs for president. And the reason I'm throwing that in, I know it's like, oh, back to Barack. But do you know how many dope dealing, coke selling, weed smoking selling members of people that came to the barbershop all went and voted? They voted when they had leadership they believed that they should vote for. I know it. In that barbershop, I saw so many jokers that hustled that never voted in their life. But they was like, yo, man, I think I'm going to do it. I ain't on parole no more, so I'm going to go and do it. I was like, and you know, because you saw me getting registered. Right. I registered them jokers, right? So don't tell me. I'm telling you as a person on the ground dealing with these people that they will do if they get the leadership.
Right. So now I'm finished saying what I was saying. So when those people went out and voted, right, they threw a vote based on some emotional stuff. They didn't cast a vote based on some very specific agenda items that they wanted to see addressed. And what I'm saying, at some point, you got to let me finish my. But at some point,
they wanted to see someone that looked like them. That was their own, and that's all we needed. See, you're talking yourself out of the fight. You're talking out of it.
No, what I'm saying is
in the fight. Okay. So let's do it. I'm asking all the generals, all that understand the political system, all that understand how it goes. Now that because understand, they're going to want to talk. But if they don't have any leadership, I'm talking about the government is going to want to talk to these people. That mayor is kissing a lot of butt right now.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so they're ready to come to the table, but we don't have the people that can be ready to go to the table for them. They sitting there saying something else. I'm saying to you, hey, it's here. We are in the position. Now, who's going to be a leader in it? That's the problem we're having.
We have the table.
We're trying to degrade the people out there attempting to say, my voice must be heard. How are we doing that?
So every time I could attempt to answer, I get interrupted. So what I'm saying to you again.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'm saying to you again
I'll
is.
put my phone on mute.
Okay.
Me too.
What I'm saying to you again is this, right? Those people who are out there who are engaged in this action, it hasn't worked. There's no organized strategy now for it except to destroy. We've seen it over and over again. Let's look.
I disagree.
Okay. He's right. But again, this is what I just said. Eric, we need you to do that part. We need men with your intellect to do the part you're talking.
I'm gonna put my mic on mute and let you guys just have this conversation, because I'm understanding.
No, Eric, don't do that.
Right, because
it's a conversation.
Well, because every time I try to finish my point, right? So I understand what you're saying. Let's take Newark as an example. Let's go through the riots that took place in Newark, right? Drive up Springfield Avenue. Well, you live there, right? They're still women 50 plus years later. 50 plus years later. There have been plenty of swaps in terms of, well, firstly, getting rid of the Italian mayor, right? And saying we need black mayors. right? But then I asked the question again in the key metrics, what has changed? So yeah, they burnt the shit down. Yep, they rioted, they looted, they did it all. And in 50 plus...
Now, can I answer that? You asked the question, can I answer it?
Go ahead.
Can I say to you that more black people live in the Ivy Hill section of Newark than they ever did? Can I say to you the same thing in Forest Hill? Can I say the same thing in the Weequay section that you grew up? Right?
And in East Orange.
Those sections of town, East Orange probably got jacked up to some degree. But to what you just said in Newark, okay? Because of men like your father, right? It totally changed for at least 40-something years, almost 50 years, has changed the political outlook of that town, of this town, right? It changed it, right? Black folks who were relegated to a very particular part of Newark now live all over.
Farrakhan, what I'm asking you is this, and I'm going to just, what I would ask you to do is look at what the unemployment rate for black folks was then, what the unemployment rate for black folks is now. I would ask you to look at segregation of schools then versus segregation of schools now, right? In New Jersey, Essex County, the most segregated schools. I would ask you to look at underemployment. I would ask you to look at a whole bunch of other things.
But Eric, you don't have to ask me that, because if you can recall, we can go back to the earliest shows,
right?
Like when it was you and Osman,
right?
And I gave you those things,
right?
Remember, I gave you those
right?
things.
And so, what the hell does it matter, right? So yeah, Eric, right? Back to anecdotal. Eric is look. I can tell you in the house that we lived in on Wilbur Avenue, that I can give you personal stories, right? Where the mailman came and said, oh, back in the day, you couldn't have black folks living in these houses, right? But I'm looking going, okay, I got that we got to move and live in a Tudor house on Wilbur Avenue, but I'm saying, how's our team doing? We do shows. And Jody Pittman called yesterday about issues going on in Newark, right? We just got finished talking about with a black mayor, mute your phone, please, Vincent, thanks. With black mayor sitting in office, how a young man was chased and gunned down by a police officer. So to have the conversation, right, and then that's what drew her ire. She said, listen, we're focusing on what's going on over there, but this happened here. So in all the change that you want to talk about that has transpired, right, here, right, all the faces have changed. All of them.
Now, can I? That's our fault. Let me just throw this in response. What you're failing to realize is how we, as black people, fell off of our responsibility of pushing it forward. Right? See, that's what happened. See, those first guys, like your father, right? Those guys, they pushed for something, and then they got it, and they had to live and adjust and take care of their kids. But then guess what? The kids, the grandkids, they didn't move the bar any further. And that's what happened. So what ended up happening is the people that were once in control sat back and watched us let it whittle away so that they can now manipulate easily and control it from the outside.
So, no, wait a minute. Farrakhan, no. Just so that you're clear, my father's biggest fight and biggest argument was that we were fighting for seats and not for power. See, so your understanding of what was taking place back then is different than what I'm telling you was taking place. So yes, people were jumping in the seats, but there was no economic or political power being gained. Right? And so this idea, this notion that, well, there's change, there is no change. There's just changing of seats, like musical chairs, or like the hamster on the wheel. But when you look at the key indicators, that has to be our compass.
Okay. Now, can I say something?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, let's take it back to the riot. And I agree with Farrakhan 100%. Now, the riot is up there. The mayor is looking to make a difference. That's where leadership steps up and says things like, listen, the big problem that we have with all of this frustration is, 1, the cops. 2, you need more black cops. 3, you need more employment. 4, we need better schools. Okay, they are now at the point where the mayor is giving them a seat at the table to be held. And Farrakhan's right. That's where Eric Dawson, who has a show that's going all around the world that people are listening to, should say, one of the things that you should be talking to the mayor about is bringing that change about. Not defeating the process, but guiding the process to the next step. The same thing that happened in the city of Newark. Yes, they got more seats. Okay, now they should have went for the next step. Okay, let's now take over this. Let's now move our position and power to this. Let's use our influence to better that. That is the progression of change. And we keep forgetting that.
Right, and so...
But Eric, every time you say something negative about the movement, it loses its momentum.
There is no movement.
There's no movement. I think you're delusional. There's no movement.
There is no movement?
No, there's no movement.
See, there is movement when people now start rioting. Movement, momentum, traction. There is movement when people start standing up saying that, you know what, this happened here and I'm tired of it. Movement. Gain on that. Get traction. These people are fed up. And Farrakhan's right. It's about time for leaders to step up and say, yes, we're fed up. Let's do something now. This is our opportunity to change those things that we're fed up about.
Right, but Vincent, here's what I'm saying to you again, right? So these leaders that you talk about, these leaders don't get support from anybody, right? They wind up out there with their asses hanging in the wind. So wait, let me finish my point, right? So you have the rioters and the looters and the stuff who don't get engaged at the local level beyond rioting and looting. So they don't show up at board meetings. They don't show up at other productive things to aid those local leaders to be able to get some semblance of power. So now I'm trying to paint the scenario for you. So you still have on this side those who have political power and economic power, right? The idea, as you say and Farrakhan said, is to get at the table. Those people are never willing to relinquish anything. So now, when you have the rioting and the looting, what they want to do is they want to calm the rioting and the looting down, because at the end of the day, they need us to be the commodity to their wealth and to their power, right? So us burning down shit doesn't help their cause. So then what they go, and we refer to those people as the Negro whisperers and the slave catchers. Those are the ones that they seek. So while you have all the rioting and you have the chaos going on down here, you have people like the Al Charlatans of the world who come up and they say, hey, listen, we're the leader. We speak for those people. We'll sit down at the table, right? And we don't kick those people out, right? So those people go get to sit down and carve out something that has nothing to do with transformatively changing anything. Now, let me finish this. So 30 seconds and I'm done. 30 seconds and I'm done. 30 seconds and I'm done. Please don't step. Right, 30 seconds and I'm done. So then the leader that you're talking about that should come up has no support from anybody. None. So they don't get to the table that you're talking about. They never get there. The people that the corporation white supremacy, the people who are in control of economic and political power, they already know who they want to come to that table. And those are the people who are always lying there. Vincent, thanks for Vincent. Don't please. All right, Vincent. Go ahead, Vincent.
Okay, now, here is the thing, Eric, and here is the one thing that a lot of people forget about leadership. Leadership is not the simple fact of you having an issue and wanting people to support you. Leadership also includes you supporting the needs of the people. Right now, the people are out there. They're out there rioting. They're out there expressing their frustration. This is not the time for leadership to say, okay, everybody, put down your things and everything, and we're going to sing Kumbaya. No, this is the time for the leadership to stand up and say to them, like Reverend Dr. King did when they were boycotting, and they wanted him to end the boycott. He said, no, this is the needs of the people, not the needs of me. The needs of the people. That is effective and solid leadership. Not somebody who comes around and says, okay, we're going to sing Kumbaya and everybody stop rioting and nothing's going to happen. No, that's not not a leader. That's a slave whisperer. A leader is a person who regards the needs of the people and does his best to serve them.
Hey, gentlemen, I just want to say this. No leader is stepping up. We have rejected, at this point, the last 3 major situations for Black America and the wrongdoings of Black America. Those men that you named, the Al Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons, were all sent home. Right? But because we don't want to deal with them. We recognize what they do. These youth, they recognize it, so they don't want them. The problem is, no one else is stepping up. I'm calling my 2 gentlemen who are running for congressman and senator. Right. Okay, I'm saying it's dog. Okay, it's time y'all be that leader. Right. If you're saying that that's what's needed, I'm saying to you to be it. I'm saying that they will listen to a new voice. And what's going to happen is, in the void, right, of no new voice coming, they're going to go right back to Al Sharpton.
No, and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that, Farrakhan. No, I don't. So, and I don't disagree with that.
I know you don't disagree with it, but what I'm saying is, when the void happens, guys like Al Sharpton can fill it. So let's not allow the void to happen. Even if it becomes a unified table, right? I'm saying to you, push for the new Black leadership.
Right, and so what I'm saying to you is this:
are waiting for it.
Right. So the people that you can't pull. Well, you can. I mean, I guess you do what you want to do, but to conveniently cherry pick pieces of Dr. King. See, let's have the whole conversation about how he was abandoned. How he was abandoned. So when I talk about and Diane says movement, I'm saying, look, that guy that we want to revere, that we want to put up on a pedestal, we want to make statues of and give a national holiday to and have streets named after, that guy was abandoned. Read those letters. Read the torment that he went through in terms of how the churches abandoned him, how the Black community abandoned him, right? But we want to have this romanticized view of what Dr. King did. And what I'm saying to you is this: that same culture. So when you talk about these Black leaders, Vincent, I'm saying to you that they are being undercut the same way that Dr. King has been undercut. I'm talking about real ones, right? Ones who really want progressive, transformative change, right? They're being undercut, and so the things that are being done on the streets, the rioting, the looting, and all those things, those folks are needed on a different battlefield. See, they're needed on the battlefield of supporting that young, progressive, courageous person who wants to be a leader. They're needed to come and help knock on doors or help canvass in areas that, that person might not be able to go into because of gang activity and other kinds of things. They need to step up in those kinds of ways, not in terms of burning down buildings and throwing bricks through windows. That's how they need to stand up. And so when Farrakhan says, well, these leaders don't stand up, well, no, they don't. They don't. Because they know through history, students of history, what the outcome for them is going to be. So they look and go, why? I'm going to get slaughtered.
Well, guess what, Eric? If that's the case, if you really believe that, then
I 100% believe it. I 100% believe it. I can't tell you.
Don't ever do another Eric Dawson radio show to inform the masses again, because that thing will have us in this position forever.
No, you're right.
And if you believe that, then why run for office, Eric?
Well,
when you're exercising futility.
Right. So because at the end of the day, right, sometimes the proof is in the pudding. So sometimes doing it and then being able to say I did it, and what I thought I had hoped for different, but what I thought was going to be the outcome wound up being the outcome, right? But not having done it and then talking theoretically about it is a different thing, right? So now doing it, and then what I'll say to you is this. So perfect, Vincent, perfect segue. And I don't talk about my candidacy here, but ask me, how many phone calls I've gotten, everybody will concede that the current congressman ain't worth shit. But ask me how many phone calls I've gotten to take bags of literature and knock on doors to help change their circumstances. See, this is what I'm talking about. And so now what you're saying, so this is real practical, right? So what you're saying is, well, to look at the people who won't make that phone call, won't get involved, would rather come to a campaign and say, how much money are you paying me to go knock on doors? But in the meantime, what I'm going to go do is tear down my neighborhood because I'm mad. Really? That's what we're talking about? That's the organization that you think exists?
Now, E, when you say that, this is what I'm going to say to you in response. How many, you've seen it your own self, right? You remember the kid that, I shouldn't call him kid, he's young man, right? That you gave the shirt to at the barbershop?
Sure.
He took the picture with Carter, okay?
Sure.
That young man, he's one of these out here that would be doing all that you say. But he respected you enough, right, to wear your shirt because he understood it. Right. And he looked at you with leadership in his eye, right? So, and how many of those shirts did we sell? How many hater shirts did we sell?
Fair comment. But see, when we're talking, and this is why I don't talk about me specifically, right? Because then that leads into anecdotal examples. What I'm talking...
I want anecdotes. Anecdotes is how you cure stuff.
No,
right?
not anecdote. Anecdotal.
Right? You give
not
it to one
anecdote.
If I give 3 people a medicine and it works for one, doesn't work for the other, and the other one we don't quite know, that's grounds to build off. So I'm going to go with the anecdote. Okay? I'm going to go with, if you can reach one, you can find a way to reach 100. Right? I'm telling you that the mindset is in the people. But yes, they are looking for something. Maybe they're looking for Superman, like that movie said, or searching for whatever. They're waiting.
Right. So here's what I would say again, right?
No one has told no one has told those kids in Target, right? No one has told them kids looting in Target right now that they can do better.
What I would say to you is
because
this.
Of that, they're doing what they know they can do.
Right. I'm going to say this again. If you were to go out into that crowd and you were to hand out a flyer asking those people to show up as something constructive, they wouldn't show up.
I believe they would because the people are already out there.
History.
I know they would.
I know. See, that's what I'm saying. You know they wouldn't. I appreciate your honesty, Frank. They wouldn't show
them
up.
Same corner boy kids. I just told you. Them same corner boy kids, because their barber told them to go and vote. Went and voted. Don't tell me they won't show up. I'm telling you they'll show up for the man that stands up.
And every time you say that they won't do something, it really kicks your campaign in the butt.
No. But listen. But
what
I'm not
thing you're
interested in
supposed
doing.
to have
So
as
be
a
clear,
leader is faith in your people.
But be clear. My campaign isn't about again making people comfortable with what I'm saying. I'm saying what I believe to be the truth, based on history. But listen, based on me. For the majority of my life, working in campaigns, working as advocate within the community, based on all of that. Call or go.
Hey, okay, so let's finish the show. So anyway.
I got it. Vince, I got a call. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Vincent, you're a contrarian for contrarian's sake. You so want to just jump on in there. Yeah. But let me just say this about riding his voice of the oppressed. And, I saw your post yesterday, but I don't think you considered provocateurs in your statement. And the provocateurs is what got Martin Luther King killed when he had to go back to Memphis because he wanted to prove that he could do a nonviolent protest. And the day before, the first march was interrupted by people who were paid by the feds to act out. So I think you need to consider I'm not saying that there wasn't people out there
taking advantage of the chaos. No, because there's always opportunity in chaos. But I'm just saying you should give some thought to people provoking and provocateurs in that scenario before you make a blanket statement about people acting out. So history is, and throughout history, there's always been people who are injected in a situation to cause a reaction, at a certain outcome to a situation. But go ahead, I'm listening.
Correct, you're right. And history does show that there are provocateurs or people who hire rebel rousers to give a black eye to a movement, a progression, or a motivation. And they do that all the time. They do it all the time. Yet, we still have to continue. I was in Philadelphia during the Clinton campaign and the Democratic convention that was in Philadelphia. And the Republican convention that was in Philadelphia. They had, the Philadelphia group had hired some people, some rebel rousers, to come there at a political outdoor rally to start a fight and give it a black eye. Started a riot right there in Center City.
Yeah.
So believe me, I know that people do that. Yet in some situations and sometimes, we have to move forward in spite of the opposition. We know that there are going to be people there to provoke and to incite a riot. So what do we do to prevent that or to minimize that? It's the same concept of knowing that somebody's looking for you with a gun on 15th Street. Do you not take steps to eliminate harm coming to you? It's the same thing with the campaign. So go ahead. The situation out there, what's going on now, from some people on the ground saying that the police were acting out and created a certain response too. But I'm not saying that you have to fall for it. It's this is we are in a charged political time, and people have to not be manipulated. You're absolutely right, Vincent. That I understand moving forward, but some people are just not that savvy. It's not they're already emotional and acting out of emotion. So any little thing could just tip the iceberg, as they say. Correct, and that's why you need effective leadership. Leadership not only points you in a direction, but leadership is also a part of preparing you for the things or for what could potentially happen.
So I get this conversation, right? Like when we say, and I like the way that we pull it out of the air without any context, right? In terms of how we ourselves move. So to have the conversation on one hand about the need for effective leadership, but then not doing everything we can to ensure that on every level we have effective leadership. And then to say if we don't have effective leadership, we reject it. So I agree, we need to have effective leadership. But if we're going to support ineffective leaders, right, and get them elected, how do we ever expect to get to effective leadership?
Well, if you're referring to Joe Biden and supporting his campaign?
No. I'm talking about anybody. Anybody. So from the presidency all the way down, if the measure is effective leadership, and then again, define effective. I'm defining it based on these key metrics that determine how my people are doing. Either you're effective in changing it or you're not. And then if they're not, then why? At any level. A district leader, a ward chairman, an Essex County executive, an assemblyman, a freeholder, a council person, a mayor, a state senator, U.S. senator, congressman, governor, and yes, dare I say, president. If you're not
the point
effective,
is, Eric, is that their effectiveness in being a leadership is based upon your metrics. But you have to also understand that they're operating and they're being very effective based upon the metrics of those other people.
No, but that wasn't my question. Is this: if we determine that the litmus is effective leadership, then I'm saying to effectuate what? right? To effectuate what?
I think that my position on your question, the answer to your question is, first you have to know what kind of leader is necessary. I don't think people have a clue of what kind of person they're giving their vote to, or what kind of leadership they're giving their vote to. Now, if you're going to only be for the business sector, say you're a capitalist and I'm running for office for the business community. If you're an environmentalist, you're going to balance your approach to solving problems with a business portion in mind, and what's necessary for the community not to be poisoned. I don't even think people even ask that kind of question. What kind of politician are you? And if you had to answer that question, how would you answer it? So that's a part of the problem. People are giving their votes to people they can't necessarily say what kind of politician. They voted for Donald Trump because they say he was a businessman. He was from the business community. They willingly gave their vote to him. They knew what they would get. Never mind that he failed several businesses, but they gave him that vote. So I don't think we need to define what kind of leadership and politician we need for our community.
Vincent says effective.
One of the things that we should look for.
So Vincent says effective. So what I want to ask is this. So I don't disagree with effective, but effective to do what? Effectuate what?
Well, one of the things in that we should look for in leadership is his ability to make effective changes in areas of our concern or our agenda.
That sounds like a politician's.
Let me
give you an answer. Let me give you an answer from an environmentalist point of view. Effective in raising my property value. Effective in making sure that I'm drinking clean water. Effective at making sure that the air that's being going throughout my community, I'm breathing and I can live. My quality of life. And that's what I want as a politician.
Right, now,
I don't need nobody that's going to give me a Jim Crow style answer on the business is good while my water is being poisoned. But go ahead, I'm listening.
So now here's the other part of that.
If I can answer what he was saying,
Mike, here's the other part
to
of that.
answer your question.
Mike, here's the other part of that, though. So got it. But now let's look at it in the lens that we ought to, right? So the reason your circumstances are the way that they are, right, is because there are people actively trying to keep you as a commodity to their wealth and power, right? That is.
And you have to honestly don't want to deal with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Right?
I'm listening.
See, you understand where I'm going at? See, I'm not going to give you the sugar-coated answer. You are there purposefully to serve somebody else, right? So that they can continue operating with political and economic power while subjugating you. That is it. So now the question that you're asking, in order to alleviate those stressors from you, I now have to be willing to go in and tear down that construct. So it's not about just layering on top of something. It is about me saying that I'm actively going to go to war with those power structures that are intentionally on a daily basis actively working to keep you where you are. Now, all of the other stuff makes no sense if I'm not going to war to get them to root out all of that. So I can give you some prescribed, I'm going to try to pass some legislation. No. Because they're 4 lobbyists to every 1 legislator, right? And they got a lot of money down there. All of those things are happening in real time. So to give this like political answer to your question is not going to move the needle any.
What Mike said, and if I can add to it, it's true. It's a simple fact of saying that, you know what, I want to go there and fight. Let me go there and get this done in terms of decreasing taxes so that our seniors don't have to sit up here and decide between buying prescriptions and buying their food. We need to sit up here and say, no, our education system sucks, and we need to make some drastic changes right now to bridge that divide of technology changes.
It sounds like a politician, right?
No, it doesn't sound like a politician. It sounds like a man who knows what the people need.
No, but it sounds like a politician because what the people need is to root out all of the people who are currently working to keep them in their condition.
Well, in making those changes, don't you have to either root those people out or get them to follow the actual to follow the actual call of leadership?
I don't understand what that meant. Call or go.
Okay, what that means is this: if you are looking to make those changes, that means that you have to either move people or convert people.
Well, you know what? Wait a minute. Farrakhan, Farrakhan, hold 1 second. Now that statement that you made, I agree with. That so for me, the campaign literature is really simple: convert people or move them. Because the condition that we're in right now doesn't work for us. So I'm in the business of converting people or moving them. See, all the other stuff, all those other words don't matter. And so yes, I believe that. Call it go.
First, I called because I was listening to you guys go back and forth about like what is a leader, or like how do you bring a leader? What should a leader be doing? First and foremost, a leader is a teacher. Okay, a leader is one who informs people of situations that can be used. When we're talking politics, right? A leader is one who galvanizes people to protect and move forward their interests. That's what we want. We want people who will educate people who may not know that they need something. Because let's be very clear, there are many people, okay, and it's particularly in black society, who do not know what they need. They know what they don't have, but they don't know what they need. Right? They don't know the answer to the problem. Right? And because they don't know that,
if I can add to it, let me just add something quickly to what Farrakhan said. A leader makes more leaders. A person that is making followers, a pep rally, putting on somebody that want to just make it followers of that person. As a leader, you have to be able to make more leaders, so that I'm not the ultimate rule. I want to make leadership contagious. So when the person look in the mirror, the leader is standing before them. That's basically saying what Farrakhan is saying in a different way, but in similar fashion. To what you just said, and I always throw in my leader into the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Virtually the only black man that we can say to this day, well, you can see the seeds of his leadership, right? You can see where he created other leaders, other people that people stand and follow for, right? That's what and first and foremost, what was he giving you? A teaching. He gave us a teaching. See, we're arguing about the same thing the wrong way. Okay, speaking different languages, yeah.
Right. It's just playing with the language, and that's because of that. We'll stay in this circle for 50 years. We'll have this show 360-something days a year, right? What we have to do is we need to look for men and women, right, that will stand in front and say, "Let me show you. Let me guide you on some things. Did you realize this? What's wrong in your town or what's wrong in your city? This is how you can help and enjoy it." We got to stop saying what people won't do. We don't know what people won't do until we've done it ourselves. And see, that's the problem. There's too much talking about what black folks ain't going to do, what we haven't done. We haven't done it because nobody truly allowed it. Nobody truly understood it. We are 50 years free in this country of 500 years of oppression. We babies, man. We babies to this. We babies to independence. We don't know it. Black folks just got some money. That's why we act stupid with it. That's why we make money phones on videos. Just like white people, when they first got some money and got some gold and got some this, they was making gold chalices and dumb shit. Because when you get it for the first time, you do dumb things with it. You got to have it for a while. Let it marinate. Then you know what a good steak is. Everybody likes steak first time, right? Then you go to a fine restaurant and you get one. You're like, damn, that's extra tender. Right now I understand what the marbling is in a steak. That comes with experience. We don't have it yet, man. We got 50 years. So let's start organizing to give them that. I'm telling you, there's every black person you see. I'm not gonna say every. That's a horrible way to say it, right? But the majority of them black kids that's out there looting, they're looking for something, and we stand there telling them what they ain't doing, but instead of figuring out how to help them do what they're looking for, and what they're looking for is something better. Come on, now. That's how this is gonna work, brothers. That's how it's gonna work.
I agree with that one. I got to roll out of here. Y'all have a good day. Great talking to you, brothers.
All right. So, yeah, we are far away from that, and for those who are working toward it, I say again, working toward that does not include. I was just reading now that they've called in the National Guard. There, right? That stores are still being looted. There was a mother, I guess, who was interviewed, and I'm always leery of the media because they cherry pick the people they want to interview to drive the narrative they're interested in driving, right? But they picked a black woman who was trying to shop in a store for her child to buy groceries and was then able to get them because the store was looted and was now on fire. So. Getting to the space that we're talking about, I disagree that burning down businesses in your own community is the way to get there.
I'm with you on that. And I'll say it again. No, I don't think that is the be-all, end-all solution. But I'll say this again as well. What we have dealt with is that people have been so frustrated of not being heard, not using their voice, and not being heard by these politicians. They come by on the election cycle, make all sorts of promises and platitudes, kiss some babies, and come to your fish fry. Yet when it comes time for you to actually need them, they do not have your back. And that frustration culminates to a powder keg. And all it takes is now people dealing with frustrations and anxieties of being sheltered in place, and overpriced foods, and, people not wearing masks and knowing where this disease is going to kill them is coming from. And then on top of that, dealing with the simple fact of a disease is about to kill you, and you have to deal with, once again, that old factor of this white cop who has a superiority complex, who's got his knee on my brother's neck. And everybody's saying he can't breathe.
And I'm telling you,
that's the powder keg for it.
See, but I want to see, and I think that image should become symbolic, right? And I'm not for a lot of symbolism, right? I'm more for substance. But like I said yesterday, that knee on his neck is representative in every way of America's knee on the neck of the foundational black American from the very first day an enslaved African landed here. That's it. So 2020, that picture to me was worth 1,000 times 1,000 words of how America has had its knee on our neck since we've been here. And so I'm not irate with what took place in Minnesota. I'm bracing myself for the next one because we've not yet focused, I don't think, on solving the problem. And the problem is deeper than just what took place in New York and just what's taking place. See, it's a cancer that's metastasized, right? And we see polyps showing up everywhere. We got to root it out at its core.
Well, then Black America actually has to come to the realizations that we are still living the nightmares of our grandparents and great-grandparents. Because that not only symbolizes it, but look at the cavalier of it. He's got his knee on his neck with his hands in his pocket, and so in such hubris that he's just talking to people like, he's interviewing for his golf tee-off.
And that's why, with my sister Jody Pittman, and again, I bring her up, and I appreciate the passion, where she says, we need to be focusing on how to effectuate change there. Yeah, I get it. One of the things that you and I talked about, Vincent, before we got on air, was, again, why things are not changing, right? And how they could more easily change if people, were honest about understanding why things are the way that they are in the first place. And what I said to you off air was that it seems to me that if you had somebody at the federal level who really wanted to effectuate change, because we see it happening, we know it happens, and every time it happens in a police department, what do they say? Oh, we need more police training, right? We need sensitivity training, right? We need all of these different things. Okay, so here's the question I would ask all of the people who are in charge right now at the federal level. Do you not believe that what took place in New York and what we just saw in Minneapolis is there's a powder keg in some other state just waiting to go off? Do we agree that, because if the culture of this country, if it's in its DNA, right? So we know that somewhere else it's going to happen. And we at this point know that there are indicators, right? Because Vincent, you talked about doing some basic research on these police officers, right? You just Googled them and you found some information, right? And so we can go through and look at all the instances where we've had white cops do this kind of stuff, and we can find in those cops' records some stuff. So wouldn't it be a simple thing for the DOJ to say, okay, look, so we've got some parameters to search, and we're going to create thresholds, different levels, right? Based on the information that we already have, that if the grievances from the community reach this level, it's a crisis level, and we need to pay immediate attention because we consider that to be a powder keg that is more likely to explode than this one over here, because the number of egregious cases are lower than the threshold that we're identifying based on the overall data that we're looking at that shows how these things, bubble up.
We already have the mechanics in place. All we have to do is a little fine tweaking. And this is going to be another Eric Dawson show first, that we're going to find out, later on, that this is what they're going to do. If we're going to make a change in this situation, this particular action of police violence against people of color, then it's relatively simple. We have the FBI, which has a federal base of all police officers. Now, all we have to do is inject it into the FBI database and their profilers, the incidents involving police with people of color, including lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let that draw a red flag to the FBI profilers, and then let them say, okay, this person has now reached a level where he, at some particular point in time, will do A, B, C, and D against people of color. And they need to either be retooled, retrained, or fired.
Right. And that's it. I mean, look, the FBI profiles people all the time.
Correct.
Right? They profile you, and so they can profile now based on all the data that they have. Right? They could have, and if they don't have a database that can do this yet, they should, where they could have uploaded into one central place the complaints that have come through these various police departments. And you know where I would start off? I would start off, and you got a profile, right? I would start off in looking at police departments that have a disproportionate makeup of white cops to black cops.
Black, yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying, Vincent? Right? So you go there first and you say, okay, because that's where it's most likely going to happen, right? And so now from those, right, profiling that, I now want uploaded all the data that will let us know about the egregious actions that police officers have taken, right, over the last 20 years or whatever it is you want to say. Now, that's going to spit out some information for you, which will give you an opportunity to measure that against some other hotspot areas where police officers are behaving inappropriately or criminally. And then you can begin to intercede. You can be proactive as opposed to waiting. But as long as we have elected officials or people who have been installed into positions who want to be in denial about the what's baked into the DNA of this country. We're never going to get to that, right? Because there has to be an admittance first, right? We have to admit that there's a culture. We have to admit it. And then once we admit it, then we can begin to attack it. But they don't want to admit it. It's almost like it's an anomaly what's going on in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Oh, it was an anomaly what went on with Eric Gardner. Oh, what happened over here with Mike Brown, that was an anomaly. And oh yeah, we need to just kind of go over there and look at that thing. No, it's a deeper thing we need to look at.
If we can quote Joseph Stalin, when one person dies because of an action, it's a tragedy. Yeah. More than one, it becomes a statistic. We are well into the statistic level of people of color being killed by police officers. We need to now be proactive rather than reactive and dealing with the cover-up or bringing in the National Guard to deal with their anger. We need to now take steps to prevent this, rather than sitting up here dealing with this as, okay, yeah, he's just a good old boy. He just got a little rough with him. No. Those days are over. Here we go. Here we are moving into 2020.
Well, those days are not over.
Hold on, 30 seconds.
But they're not over.
No, those days of calling him a good old boy should be over.
Oh, they should be.
And and now I'm at the situation where the fear that my grandfather had for my life, I now have that fear for my son and my grandson because of police. That has to stop. Okay, 30 seconds is up. Go ahead, Eric.
No. I agree. So, I don't know. That was in the space that we're in. The watching the documentary on Miles Davis. That's where it took me. Like it just because I was like, man, we're still dealing with that. Like he dealt with that, and we're still dealing with it. But
I dealt with it.
If you didn't see it, Vincent, you got to watch the documentary. It was an amazing, amazing documentary, and he was a brilliant guy. And I want to thank Diane for putting me onto it. And Diane, I don't know if you're still on the line.
I am.
But there was another documentary that you mentioned to me too, which I'm going to watch today.
Which one? The two killings of Sam Cooke, Quincy. There's a couple of them. What happened to Nina Simone?
Yes, that one. Hold on 1 second. We got Farrakhan calling in. Mr. Swab. Hello. I do. Hello. Hello.
Okay. Hi.
I don't know what happened. Wait a second.
Hello.
All right. I got Diane and Vincent back. So we'll get Farrakhan when he calls in. But what were you saying? Yes, I want to see what happened to Nina Simone.
What happened to Miss Simone? Yeah. That's another good one. Another one, again, a part of history. Evolutionist, musician. That.
Hello.
Beginnings and stuff that they were running from, whether it was physically or mentally running from, and they sought music as their escape. So just to watch the history, to watch how they live their lives, and to see that a lot of them intertwined with each other. So when you talked about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, you talk about Sam Cooke, you talk about all of these other activists and musicians that all kind of ran in the same circles.
Right. Let's see if I can take Farrakhan's call. Farrakhan?
Hey, I'm here.
All right, go ahead, brother.
You hear me?
Yep, got you.
Okay. Look, to something Vincent just said, Vince, you said, you know, you fear for your life, for your son's life and your grandson's life. I
Yes.
would say to you, that's the problem. We have to stop fearing for our children's lives and make them fear for theirs.
That's what I'm looking to do.
You want to stop Philly? You want to stop Philly? Don't stop Philly by letting them know how scared you are. You stop them by making them scared.
No, that's what I'm looking to do.
Right?
In fact,
you can argue all day about how we do that, but I know one way to do that is with them people that go right.
See, Farrakhan,
I want to get back to the Farrakhan. See,
then you're going to do that.
all right.
You know, you're going to have to respect that. That's just their thing. That's the first outcry. Violence is always the first outcry.
Right.
And then discussion comes in later, right? You have to fight, and then you talk about it after. You don't talk about the fight before the fight.
Got it.
You talk about the fight after.
All right.
So I'm saying to all of us black folks, stop worrying about what they might do to your kid, and make them start worrying about what you'll do to them.
All right. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call.
Farrakhan, let me
But I want to get back to the Nina Simone. Like he called in late, and we had already moved on to another segment. So
I'm gonna listen.
all right. Thanks. So back to the documentary on. So I haven't seen it yet, Diane. And then what was the other one that you had mentioned to me?
The other one that's good is Quincy, and then the other
Chasing
one is,
Train.
Yeah, Chasing Train. That one is good. That's Coltrane, John Coltrane.
Oh, I
and
saw Studio 54.
Yes, you didn't see it?
I did.
Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah, he said Miles Davis, Quincy, and then the last one would be The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. That one is really good too.
All right, so that's some good. That'll take up my whole afternoon, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, what else is in the news? What else didn't we talk about? I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about what's going on in Minnesota. I mean, I guess Minneapolis. Is it in Minnesota? Or is it on the outskirts?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. So Vincent, until we get the other topic, you wanna comment on what Farrakhan said when he called? Vincent?
Can you hear me now?
I got you now.
Okay. Yeah, the
Wait,
comment on
is that a
Farrakhan.
Verizon commercial you're doing now?
No, that's Sprint.
Oh, okay.
No, but the comment on what Farrakhan said, and I give you some insight on me. I'm not the type of person that operates in the world of fear. When I see a concern, that something actually gives my concern and piques my attention, I'll move forward on making changes so that I can eliminate the chance or the fear itself. So earlier, a few years ago, when the situation happened with the New York and Texas and Baltimore. At that time, I just started my streaming television station. I put together state troopers, 6 different local police establishments that are predominantly white, and in fact, I even had a mayor or a former mayor at that time who was working with the governor, Eldridge Hawkins, at a panel in front of a group of people, and some of them were from the Black Lives, some of them were from the clergy, and we're addressing a situation with the police violence because we needed to eliminate that chance or that fear of that chance of it happening to our children. So no. I'm not a person who's going to sit up here and go into fear and cower in a corner. No, I'm going to stand and fight. I'm going to make changes, not only for my life and my family life, but for those who are around me or even in my state. In fact, out of that, they started the de-escalation process and training in the state of New Jersey, starting with the state troopers, implemented in South Jersey and Camden now, and some other places where there are predominantly white police officers. So, no. Trust and believe. Fear is not a place where I dwell.
Well, I'm afraid for my son's life. I'm afraid for my nephews' lives. I'm afraid for, my cousins. You know, there have been instances where I've feared for my life, and you know, I think that, you know, when it's you though, and you encounter those kinds of situations, adrenaline takes over, right? And so you know, you don't have a chance to step back and look at what's actually going on. You're just in the middle of that space. I saw Principal Kafele posted on his page regarding you know, this tragedy. He said, you know, he watched all of the, you know, imagined all of the people who were standing around recording, watching as this man lost his life, and he said that he probably would have lost his life in the process of trying to save that man's life. You know, so yeah, I mean, look, it is, and again, we have been conditioned not to lean into this conversation about how brutal this country really is. Do you understand? I mean, like we've been conditioned, and they're doing everything they can through books and literature and other kinds of things to have us believe that radicalize you. There's something wrong with you. See, you're racist. You see, or you're saying things that are no, or you don't love the country, or they'll throw all of these different things at you instead of them. And so I've even begun to mute your phone, please. I've even begun to look at some of those people differently and saying, are you an agent provocateur? You see, do you not have my best interests at heart? See, because I don't have time to sit and convince you of something as a grown man or woman you should already know. And if you don't know it, is it because you don't want to know it? And you are part of wanting to keep me in this slumber? And so I look at that all differently now. But we live in a hostile land. That's where we live. And when I'm looking at these people, policymakers, right? What did you say earlier, Vincent? Either convert or get the F out of the way. So convert, meaning that you and repent. And repent. And now we make some moves based on your new position to dismantle this thing that has kept us in bondage. But if that's not what you're doing, if all you're doing is platitudes about, oh, you know, I'm going to look into this, oh, we're going to evaluate that, oh, we're going to, no. When you're on a battlefield, you're in a battle, you're fighting. So I don't need somebody who's talking to me about whether or not they're going to look at some study to determine whether or not they should fight. No, fight. Fight. If you're not going to do that, move. So that's the conversion. Conversion, fight. You're not going to fight, move. And I'm going to tell you, none of them, almost none of them are going to. And the ones that want to, the ones that would, they look in and they see a graveyard of bones of the Martins and the Malcolms, and we can list the other ones. And they go, where's the support going to come from if I step out there? Right? So to say step out there, but we got no organization that's going to be supportive of you. But we're all going to sit and we're going to yell from our porches, step out there. We need a leader. I'm saying, well, then present an organization through which that leader could elevate. Do that. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so what I said to you, Vincent, months ago, right? And we'll see how this all shakes out. In this election that's coming up with all of the turmoil, how much of a turnover we're going to get. We saw in 2018 a slight turnover in the House, right? Some monumental races that were won. And now you see the pushback from the establishment. They didn't embrace those people who won. right? They didn't embrace them. They went to war with them immediately. Almost like the white blood cells, right? Come in when you have an infection, right? They just came and attacked.
Wonderful term using white blood cells.
But that's what happened, right? The body was infected now, right? So they thought the body in the Congress and in the Senate was infected. And so now the white blood cells had to come and try to fend off the infection.
Well, here's the situation. I don't think we're the people of color are the infection as much as we are the cure.
Oh, I don't disagree. Well,
we're dealing with a lot of people who consider us to be a threat.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's a matter of perception, right?
Correct.
Right, as to whether or not we're the infection or not.
Because of me having a better quality of life, if me having some level of social security and I'm at rest with the life of my children, for me having a better understanding that, our seniors are going to finally be taken care of, and that our teachers are teaching with passion and having the resources to actually help them out. If that means that I'm threatening somebody's standard of life, then hey, it's too damn bad.
Hey.
So that's my position, and that's my point. And look, as we talk about being proactive and understanding the situation, yes, there are going to be some Negro whisperers who are going to talk all crazy stuff about me while I run for office. Fine, get in line. It's really long, so start walking now.
I like that. Oh my gosh.
But it's not going to stop me. That's the whole point. And I'm don't want to put words in his mouth, but maybe that's what Farrakhan was saying in terms of us, now stepping out into that leadership position.
So
go ahead.
So as we, because look, I think that all eyes should be on the local races, but it is on the presidential race, and now I think the unemployment number people who filed has topped 40,000, right? It's at 41 and change. The number dead has crossed over 100,000 people. I was listening to a report today. They were talking about the airline industry, still not recovering and probably won't recover or begin to recover in any real way for another 18 months to 2 years until there's a vaccine. It's that based on all of their studies, people are not just going to have the level of confidence to fly. The restaurant industry, from what I've been reading, is going to continue to suffer because people are not, even with their 25 or 50% capacity, social distancing and all that kind of stuff. There are far too many people who don't have the confidence to go out to restaurants right now.
See, Eric, here's the big thing. There's a natural chain of progression, correct? And that dog eat dog, the bigger ones survive and the little ones, of course, perish and fall away. And business has that same chain of progression. And what really pissed me off is what the first economic stimulus bill or COVID stimulus bill that came out, and I said this back then, is that we are catering $1.4 trillion to large businesses that need to die. They need to go with the dinosaur. They needed to. But yet we're paying more money for them rather than giving the money to smaller businesses and to the individual households who really need that money. The only thing that we're doing is supporting these big businesses. Like Amtrak reported of the $1.6 billion that they got and the economic stimulus. Yeah, they're reporting that if they don't get another $1.2 billion more, that they're going to be out of business. Well, guess what? Go out of business. Because what happens when one business fails? Eric, you tell me. You're an entrepreneur.
Well, when it creates an opportunity. But you also have to understand that when that business fails, right, what company was it that you were saying?
Oh, well, the latest one was Amtrak.
Right. So we have to look at the number of employees that they employ. So here's their shield, right? So, they say we can't fail because if we fail, we've got, 10,000 employees and then their health coverage and their financial insecurities. And now those people in the communities that they live in can no longer support those small businesses with the paychecks that they were getting. So there is...
Really?
Yes, there's always a
Okay, here is the true economics of why that is so much of a lie. $1.4 billion for one company, which in terms of the people that they're talking about failing, and that 1.4 billion only represents somewhere close to maybe 130 some odd million in employee fees, and we're talking, and that's including these big executives that have these golden parachutes.
So right. So and that I agree with, right? So in restructuring, go ahead.
So in restructuring it, if they fail, if we support the actual employee rather than the big business, we're still saving what 1.2 billion.
No. But you could no. So but the negotiation, right? Which they were talking about. Was one, and they realized this in previous stimulus packages, that you had these companies that were either doing stock buybacks, they had these massive parachutes for their executives, right? So one even filed bankruptcy. They got 15 million, and they decided to take that 15 million and give it to the shareholders rather than the people that they owe money to. Right, but you know what though? But you know what I say here, Vincent? Again, I say don't hate the player, hate the game. And then once you hate the game, you'll change it.
I like that one.
Right? But don't hate the player. So we want to sit again. I don't know what the noise is. I hear.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, Diane, when you're done,
I'm washing my hands. It's like an addiction. Sorry.
No, I got a sink full of dishes over here, too. Come over here. But we don't want to focus on the game. We want to look at the individual players, and we want to point our fingers and talk about what they're doing. I'm saying we need to refocus and look at the game. And again, I say the game is set up. It's set up to have us be the commodity to their wealth, right? That's why they want to push us back out to work, because they need to make money. It's not about you. So once we understand the game, let's focus on changing the game. And in order to change the game, which are all the laws and policies and all that stuff, in order to change that, we need new people. They're not going to change it any other way. Not going to change it. So as long as you have those lobbyists, same thing, right? As long as you have those Congress people, those senators, and as long as you have those lobbyists that they hire because they were forced to hire them because those people who the lobbyists represent funded the campaign. So that's how they're all tied in together, right? So they come and they have an agenda. And all they're doing is carrying out their agenda, which has nothing to do with you. Only in that you are the commodity to their wealth. That is the only part of their agenda.
It does have a lot to do with you, because not only are you the commodity to their wealth, but now you're the benefactor of their corporate welfare.
Yeah, see, and they're mad too, aren't they, Vincent? they're like, you got to give them something. We got to give them something.
Exactly. So they're giving Boeing, another group that got $1.7 billion in corporate welfare that comes out of the pockets and off the backbones of all the little small taxpayers in America. Yes, all the small taxpayers, we got $1,200. Woohoo!
But listen, Vincent, let's be clear, right? We were talking about this dirty bird that has two wings. It ain't just the Republicans that are signing off on that stuff. You got Democrats who have these lobbyists working for them too.
Oh, well, let's talk about the ultimate slave whisperers then. Let's talk about these Democratic politicians. I can't believe it passed the Senate with all these Democrats we got. I can't believe it passed the House with all these Democrats that we had. I can't believe that nobody in New Jersey with all
See, I can't use language like that anymore. When you say you can't believe, of course I can believe. Of course I can believe it. If I understand, if I'm rooted and grounded in my understanding of why and how this whole thing is built, of course I can understand it. Like, of course. Why do you think that they were put there? Look, just go down the elect funds. Go down the elect reports. Then you will believe it. Yes.
Well, Eric, I'm going to quote my grandfather. Every time I see a bigger jackass statement and I think that we can't get any worse, someone comes up with a higher level of jackassery.
Jackassery? I like that. I like that, Vincent. But listen, guys. I'm praying for those people in Minneapolis. I want them to get focused. I don't think that they are. But we have an opportunity. And then not just the people in I can never say that. Minneapolis, right? It's one of those words I have a problem with. But that not only there, but that is just symptomatic of something bigger. And we have to continue to remember that. It's a symptom of something bigger, right? And it manifested there. It's kind of like if you get, if you've got acne, right? You got a pimple, right? Then that pimple is a symptom of something, right? Maybe you need to change your diet, something else, right? So just resolving that one pimple isn't the solution, because if you keep your diet and everything else the same, then you're gonna have another pimple crop up someplace else, and another one, and another one. And when you go to your dermatologist, they're gonna get to the root of it, so you have no more pimples. So I don't want to go pimple popping, right? So from New York to Minnesota to here, I don't want to do that. I want to root it all out. Dr. Pimple Popper, we're back to that. No, we're not. Don't even, Vincent.
No, please don't.
Oh, that was so gross.
But we need to be Dr. Pimple Popper. Can we say that? That's what we need to. But
we have to start doing things differently. Rioting is not it.
I don't think it's it. I don't think it's it. If there was if you showed me where rioting plus equaled, right, and then I could see that in these indicators, which I think ought to be our interest, right, and then primarily political and economic power. Primarily political economic power. Then I think that's where we'd be in a better place. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's 12 o'clock.